No, Shiv, my question to you, sorry.
We're going to be breaking our mics today because of how excited we are about these tankers.
Fabulous, fantastic.
This is an incredible story because, viewer, this tells you just why defense procurement is batty in our country.
It was my first outstation trip as a defense correspondent.
Oh, wow.
And then they started taking us into one of the aircraft. So I said, okay, cool. They're going to show us the inside of the aircraft. Then the damn thing came on. And then it started rumbling down the tarmac and then we took off. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Control Alt Defense this new year. So we'd like to start, Vishnu and I, by wishing all of our listeners and viewers a very, very happy 2026. 2025 was special to us because that's when this podcast was born. So we'd like to also, make no mistake in thanking all of you for making this podcast into India's biggest military podcast. We are extremely honored and humbled by all of the conversations we've had with so many of you in the comments across platforms on this incredible platform that this has become. Vishnu,
And thank
anything
you,
want
Shiv,
to say to our viewers?
thank you, Shiv, for getting me into this, because when you joined NDTV and we had that chat in my room, you
Yeah.
said, "We must do a podcast." I what podcast, yeah? What is this podcast business?
Yeah.
And I'm hooked to it now.
Yeah,
and I genuinely am.
And Vishnu's like a
I mean,
podcast icon.
I drive him to come over here.
Yeah.
And so he ditches because he works harder than me. But the fact of the matter is, had you not actually persuaded me to do it, and you were so right, because this is such an interesting way of communicating.
Yeah. No, it's-
on a theme which we both love.
It's something we enjoy very much, and we always believe in keeping the conversation open with all of our listeners and viewers. That's the reason why Vishnu and I painstakingly, along with our producer Pavitra, go through all the comments that we get. That's why, as you might see, we sometimes change the topics of our episodes on the fly because we believe that we have to listen to you, and we always will. That's a promise. So thank you once again. It's something that means a lot to us. Let's get straight into episode 32 of Control All Defense. I can't believe it's episode 32 already. It's incredible. But this is the first big decision that's been taken, Vishnu, by the Ministry of Defense in the new year.
Yeah.
And it's keeping with the traditions of this government, it's a big bang decision. It's a multi-thousand crore set of approvals that have been granted by the Ministry of Defense, Defense Acquisition Council, which is like this apex body that clears, things to buy, things that need to be cleared by the Prime Minister's office, etc. But, usually these lists are like routine stuff, but this was like some interesting things to kick the year off. So there were mainly three things, Vishnu. I know which one we're going to spend most of this episode on, but I will anyway list those three things. Basically, viewer, it was I think a 60 or 70,000 crore kind of set of approvals, which includes a whole bunch of additional Barak 8
MR SAM and potentially LR SAM also.
Yeah, missiles for the armed forces.
Which is incredible. That's a
Then
separate
you've
episode.
got a second one, which is leasing of additional MQ-9B Sea Guardian drones.
Yeah.
Remember, there are already two which have been leased, since 2020, which operated by the Indian Navy in Tamil Nadu. So it looks like the Indian Navy wants a few more because
And we'll be requiring it as well.
and
we've signed up
them.
on that.
Yeah, 21 are being acquired.
Yeah, and that's a huge buy.
Yeah,
but we
but-
want to lease a few in the interim.
Which
my
is
sense.
actually incredible, because it means that the Indian Navy, rather than wait, I think 3 years till the first deliveries, they still want more of these incredible drones to fill those gaps. But the third item that has been cleared is something that gave me goosebumps when I read it, and not all of it in a positive way, because when I hear about this item in defense, it's a bit of a nightmare for me, because again, like so many things we've discussed, Vishnu, I have a career arc.
Yeah, we do. We
both have a career
arc.
arc tracing the Indian Air Force's so far.
When did you start
fruitless
journalism?
quest.
Which year?
I started defense journalism in 2004.
This is 3 years. 3 years prior to you having joined is when India first ordered those IL-78 MKIs.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's been going on since then.
Since then. So no, just to set the stage so that all of our
24
viewers
years.
and listeners know what's going on. The Indian Air Force acquired six IL-78M mid-air refueler aircraft in 2001. 2001.
Yeah. So Shiv, should I just go into this a little bit? Just the timeline.
Just go into it because
and jump in because this is the crazy part of the story.
You have to jump in because those 6 aircraft that we acquired now 23 years ago are still the only refuelers we have.
Yeah.
They're still the only refuelers. Go ahead.
2001, 2000. This is an incredible story because viewer, this tells you just why defense procurement is batty in our country. 2001, 2002, we ordered 6 IL-78 MKI aerial refuelers from where, Shiv?
Uzbekistan. Huh.
Yeah, Tashkent Aviation, right? They were unfinished Russian Ilyushin 76 airframes, but they're new nonetheless. Each one was valued about $50 million a plane. But then things move fast. We're talking about slow. People are asking why you just said slow. No. Things move fast. Because in March 2003, approximately a year and a half or so after we ordered them, we inducted the first one. So things are moving great. A new squadron was formed, 78 mid-air refueling squadron based in Agra. You flew with them. That's a story that's coming up. October 2003, the first one made its appearance. 2003, 2004, just 3 years after the deal, all 6 have been delivered, right? Then things start going south.
So fast.
And they start going south really fast. So if that was the pacey bit, here's where it gets wild. In 2006, the Air Force said, look, we need 6 more because, we're a growing Air Force. I don't know if we were the world's 4th largest at that stage, but we were still a very large Air Force.
Yeah.
We were getting into these external deployments. We needed them to, we needed fighters up in the air. Fighters need air-to-air tankers. That's simple as that. 2006, we issued the first RFP or request for proposal.
For 6 more.
Yeah, for 6 more.
Yeah.
It's always been 6. And those 6 have still not come. Sorry, you keep watching. Don't switch off now.
And by the way, we're not laughing at the Air Force. By the way, these are tears of misery, not of joy,
of anger.
Yeah.
It's just rubbish.
Frustration. Yeah.
Right. So the contenders were the Airbus A330 new one, MRTT, and which the Australians use and several other air forces use. Is pretty
UAE.
much the state of the art. That's right. And the Russian IL-78, which we wanted, which we already use. The IL-78 serviceability has been low. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to get into it. Spares and the likes, that's been a problem. Now, so 2006, we issued an RFP. 3 years go by. The A330 MRTT is selected. So no, Air Force says, we want this platform. We like it. It works for us. Great. It did comparative trials with the IL-78. Then they ran into cost issues because somebody after the Air Force said, we kind of like this. They said, it ain't happening. And then we are into 2010.
Yeah.
So 2006, they issued the RFP. We are now 4 years down the road. The finance ministry says, it ain't happening. Sorry. So the Ministry of Defense proposes and the Finance Ministry deposes. Okay? So what do they say? फिर से शुरू कर दो. 4 years have gone by. Capability doesn't exist. कोई बात नहीं यार. This is the file.
Reboot
The file. Put it पीछे से. It'll come back up. Then we can keep going around in circles. Right. So then they cancelled it and we're in 2010. So the 2013, now why 3 years have had to go by in between is another saga. God only knows. The Air Force finally got around to expressing intent one more time. Ki, boss, I really do need those planes.
Yeah.
So
no, and around this time, the Air Force was doing a lot of multilateral exercises
everywhere.
and stuff.
Everywhere.
It needed those refuelers to go abroad. Yeah.
So in 2013, they expressed an interest that, we really do need these planes. So 2016, right, there was another, this is RFP2, the process is underway, right? A330 Airbus guys, we're there, dude. If you want us, we're there. So the Air Force likes the plane, but it got cancelled because of pricing. So then we considered buying more IL-78s.
Like they didn't know what the price was.
Yeah, because which the Air Force said, we don't want these planes. Anyway, that didn't work out either. So we are now in 2018. So another 2 years have gone by, right? So round 2, again pricing, it didn't move. 2018, we issued a third RFP, right? For six mid-air refuelers. This time we brought in Boeing, Airbus, and Illusion, right? So that was in 2018.
I remember this.
Between 2022 and 2024, that's 4 more years. Negotiations, proposals, potential. These carry on going. Potential conversion of existing IL-76 into tankers, as if our IL-76 haven't done enough work for decades, right? All that continues. Then somebody said, let us convert Boeing 767 aircraft, which the Indian Air Force has never operated, right? The armed force, of course, they haven't operated the A330 either, but these are older planes or whatever it is. Let's get some of them, possibly second-hand ones, convert them into tankers, and who'll do it? We'll do it. HAL will do it, or Israel Airspace will do it. Now we are in 2025. A few months back, April 2025, we signed a contract with a US-based company called Metria Management to wet lease Boeing KC-135 Stratotankers as a stopgap measure. Right. Now, these are flown by American personnel, including retired US Air Force personnel. If there is war with China or with Pakistan, you know what happens to these tankers? No, Shiv, my question to you, sorry. If we go into a war...
We're going to be breaking our mics today because of how excited we are about these tankers.
If we go into a war with China or Pakistan, you know what happens to these tankers? They fly home.
No, this is...
No, but I'm not kidding. This is just... If we go for training exercises, great. If we go to war, sorry. You know? So they go home. Then October and December 2025,
There's
finally,
another chapter to this.
This is the final chapter, one hopes. So Israel Aerospace, in partnership with HAL, have emerged as the sole bidder. Now, when we started reporting defense, the moment the word sole bidder emerged, gone. Right. There is now perhaps a realization you will get into a scenario where there is one bidder. That doesn't mean it's corrupt.
And this is thanks to Manohar Parrikar, who said, why not? Why can't a sole bidder be a problem?
The assumption that if there is a sole bidder means it is corrupt, I mean, it's flawed. Do we not have systems to ensure there is no corruption?
Correct.
Right. So 6 used Boeing 767s will be acquired. They'll be converted into tankers. $900 million deal. Tender was issued in December for these tankers. IAI is committing to 30% local manufacturing.
By HAL?
No, so 30% local manufacturing of the components, I presume, which go into the air-to-air refueling system. The air-to-air refueling system is not an extensive system. You know, it's
a module.
It's a kind of a module, yeah. Expected by March 2026, 2 months from now.
No, by March 2026
is
the contract.
The deal to be signed.
Okay. I'm speechless. Because
that's a book, by the way.
Because the tanker saga in India is a tiny fraction of the tanker saga in the United States. And you remember what the United States saga was like, right?
Again, A330 versus the 767
Pegasus, right?
Yeah.
And yet if one has to put it down to numbers, and it's always useful to do so, as Vishnu just said, you just said that 2003 is when the first IL-78 arrived, and then very quickly the 6 arrived. So we are here 21 to 22 years since those aircraft arrived. And
in fact, more, because 2001 is when we ordered it. It's 2026, 25 years later.
So 2006 is when that first tender was
2001
floated.
is when we ordered 6 IL-78s.
Yeah.
Right? That's 2001. We are in 2026. So 25 years later.
And 2006 is when that first tender was floated, and we still haven't gotten a single.
The first RFP was issued.
So now let me add some more fun to this circus, which is that the leased Metria or whatever that American company is that's going to wet lease one KC-135 Stratotanker.
One or more, three, I think. Anyway,
that aircraft, Vishnu, arrives in April this year.
Yeah.
That aircraft arrives in April this year.
Yeah.
The Indian Air Force is in such a terrible situation as far as tankers. The Indian Air Force is fine. They're totally combat ready, as they proved in Operation Sindoor. They don't lack anything. But I'm merely saying that they've been pushed into a situation that is so dire when it comes to tankers that they have had to now create a formula where they do their training using the leased tankers in the hope that they will
Flown
come
by
on
US
time.
Air Force pilots, retired.
Flown by US Air Force pilots, which, as you said, they will disappear when
If there's
conflict
war,
breaks
yeah.
out, when the balloon goes up. And they will use these almost unserviceable IL-78s. I think it's like 35, 36%
45, 40,
serviceability
40, I mean, it's publicly less than 50%.
It's public domain information.
One hopes it's better than that.
for
Yeah.
combat, which is a absolutely bizarre situation. Because in people's minds, and Vishnu, this is something I want you to talk about as well. People will be saying that, why do you even need so many refuelers? You have a few refuelers.
Let me
you don't
explain.
fly abroad so much. But I want you to explain
Yeah.
why the refuelers are
Yeah.
required, obviously for long
Yeah.
haul, but also within the country.
Yeah.
You need them within the country
Yeah.
during combat as well.
Yeah. We have those AWACS aircraft, the
Yeah.
A50, which is exceptional.
Yeah.
Right? We've got 3 of those.
The Falcons.
We've got Netra, which is a made in India AWACS platform on a Brazilian platform, on a Brazilian aircraft, Embraer planes. These fly for a certain number of hours. Let's say the Netra can fly for about 4 hours. That's my estimate. I don't know if it can fly for more, even if it's 5 hours. If you're in a war type situation and you want these planes to be deployed, suppose one goes tech, you need the other one to be flying for a longer mission. What do? You refuel it air to air. Do these planes have air to air refueling? Yes, but we don't have enough tankers in the present situation. We've got IL-78s. We don't know to what extent we've integrated the capability of air-to-air refueling our A50 and our Netra with these, but I would suggest this is an important capability.
Yeah.
We have a large air force. We deploy all over the world. When the Rafales first came back to India, when we acquired them, they were being refueled by the French.
Yeah.
Right? So while we do deploy the IL-78s, they're not reliable. Spares are a problem. We want a more modern platform. Even on other occasions, when we've flown, for example, to Australia on a few occasions, we've been air-to-air refueled by other air forces. That's not an optimum situation.
No, that's
You
right.
know?
We've had to, like you said, with the UAE, with the French, and with the Australians, the Indian Air Force has had to enter into sort of fueling arrangements where our fighters and aircraft can get fueled by their refuelers.
And these are already 22 years old. So who are we kidding?
Yeah.
Right? 2003 is when the first one came in. 26, 25, 24, 23 years old.
Yeah.
Approximately 23 years old. So these are not getting any younger.
Yeah.
In 23 years, surely we should have had new planes. By the way, we aren't going to get new planes. We're going to get second-hand
Second-hand
Boeing
planes,
767s. Fair enough. There is a certain rationale in that you don't need new build platforms. But it's not here as yet. I don't, it's so again, for the benefit of our viewers, it's not about just a lack of capability, because you can always argue that no, we've got enough and it's okay for our present purposes. It's about what you seek to do as an Air Force.
Yeah.
Is everybody in the Air Force wrong when they put in that request on 3 consecutive occasions over a decade plus saying we need these planes?
Bizarre.
Are they just interested in punishing the taxpayer? And they aren't doing that. They're the taxpayers themselves, right? You want this because you have projected capability.
Correct.
So in a country where we are growing at a GDP growth rate of 7-8%, a few years back it was higher. Perhaps after the sanctions business goes away, it'll remain high once again. Do we not have the ability of buying air-to-air refueling tankers?
Yeah.
I mean, it's ludicrous. And this is one deal. We can talk about so many other deals, which has been stuck in this quagmire. And then you see what's happening with China. As we've said, and we'll keep saying in 2026, it has to be capability first. It's
True.
just common
Yeah.
sense.
This entire saga, this quest to acquire 6 tankers we've not been able to acquire, is actually it's so farcical. There was an occasion, and I'll remind you of it, Vishnu. Two come to mind, which when we were reporting them, I remember thinking, this can't be real. This is straight out of the theater of the absurd. There was one occasion in which, and I remember I was in Aero India when this story broke, and I'd reported it, where Airbus, which had won both those tenders that you've just described with the A330 multi-role tanker transport, splendid aircraft, but obviously too pricey for the Indian Finance Ministry, they had separately come to an arrangement with the DRDO,
Right.
where it was decided that the A330 would be a standardized platform for a variety of different special aircraft, AWACS and
AWACS,
refuelers, and long-haul transport and various other things. And so Airbus came up with a real, I thought they were joking, but they actually came up with a real kind of unique proposal for the Indian Air Force where they said, let's create an AWACS cum refueler. So you use it as a refueler when you want to, use it as an AWACS when you want to.
That was a pretty
and
crazy
it has a lot
idea.
of cargo space if you
I
want to just,
remember that.
haul stuff around. And that was, and they were not kidding.
No.
The thing is, they were not kidding. And I remember speaking, I can't remember who it was at Airbus, but their thing was, we don't see a way around this. There's no other way to rationalize a proposal cost in order to meet what the Air Force is asking of us. And that's incredible, Vishnu.
No, so therefore, that's just the point that, we asked for India-specific upgrades. We use different words for different projects. We wanted to meet very specific exacting requirements. Now, you can't question that, but sometimes we really need to look at the fine print on what the expectation is. If the expectation is so specific, then you may end up in a situation where there is a weapon system manufacturer who's desperate for business. They all are, right? Who will say yes to everything. You sign on to the deal, that capability comes a decade later.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's still being developed. I don't want to get into specific weapon systems, but there are specific weapon systems which, need to be developed in the way that we've signed on for. I don't know what those are, of course.
Of course we do, and I will pull those out of you in the course of this podcast. But the third chapter,
That might be my last podcast.
the ending, the last time that the Indian Air Force and the Ministry of Defence floated a tender for those 6 aircraft, like you correctly pointed out, Vishnu, there was the IL-78, which we already operate. There was the A330 lumbering into the competition for the third time with I don't know what on their minds. And there was the interesting addition of the Boeing, the 767, the KC-46A Pegasus, which had just won its own competition in the United States, right? Which was a controversy by itself because Airbus had won that contest. There was a huge protest, overturned, massive upset. And then Boeing was awarded that contract. And the deliveries of those aircraft have seen their own massive hurdles, even now in the US Air Force. But at that time, the Indian Air Force was basically faced with these 3 aircraft. It was sure it didn't want any more IL-78s. But then it became an Airbus versus Boeing kind of situation, which you usually see only in civil aviation. But here you had it with the Indian Air Force for the first time. What was that like?
No, the entire competition.
Yeah.
Well, it was a pretty crazy competition.
No, did the Indian Air Force genuinely look at the Boeing 767?
I think they did, but it was in the third RFP request where it had sort of come into the fold. But that entire process was again mired in costs.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if these are not systems that you need to look at very carefully beyond a point. The technology is fairly elementary.
Correct.
There are 2 types of air-to-air refueling, refuelers. One which locks onto a port above the fuselage of the aircraft, which is what the Americans sort of use. Which is what our C-17 could potentially use as well.
Using a boom.
And then we've got a boom, and we've got a drogue and probe, which is the other type of system which we have. These have both been established for decades. This is not your cutting edge rocket science involved over here. It's a flying gas tank. That's what it is. It's a flying fuel pump. Right? And so you just need to acquire it because it fills a specific requirement. But then if you get into cost, of the platform itself, do we need this platform? Does it need to be new build? If it's not, how many hours are left in the existing second-hand platform we are buying, which is what we're getting into on 767s. So we're going to be buying second-hand 767s and obviously the entire set of infrastructure to support those planes as well. The 767 is a great plane, but you're going for a second-hand option. That's interesting. But shall we segue into our stories now?
Oh, no, 100% we can. But just one last point on the tankers before we go to our personal stories, which is that India now has a C295 production line.
Yeah.
You've got the medium transport aircraft contest where it's basically a face-off between the American C-130, which we operate in sizable numbers, versus the Embraer C-390.
Yeah.
Both of which have, air-to-air refueling modules, and they can be converted into refueling aircraft. So I'm just wondering whether the Indian Air Force does, or should be looking at that kind of thing as well? I mean, these are, of course, much smaller aircraft.
That's the key
They are
issue.
tactical refuelers rather than long-range sort of
No, I don't think
planes.
we should. I think we need a large refueler, many of them. We need to have the ability of deploying at ranges. We exercise across the world in the
Yeah.
United States. We've had our fighters up in Alaska on several occasions, in Canada, in Arizona and Nellis, which is where I sort of have one of my stories from, and certainly all across Europe, Australia as well. So it doesn't serve any real purpose, in my opinion, to have a small air-to-air refueling aircraft, which is what, for example, the KC-390 might be. It's a stupendous aircraft, by the way. It's an interesting plane. Or the C-295. C-295 is, in my mind, is an AN-32 replacement. Ultimately, that's what it's going to do,
Correct.
with a great deal more reliability and, much more modern in many ways. But we've had some great experiences. Why don't you start us off on...
No, you've got to start, because, it just occurred to me that very few people, Vishnu, have been in refuelers. People have been in transport aircraft, people have been in helicopters. Being inside a refueling tanker during a refueling operation is a very, very rare, experience for
No,
a journalist.
it is.
And it just occurred to me that the both of us have had that experience. That's incredible. When was the first time you got into one?
The first time I got into one was an Indian Air Force IL-78 at the Red Flag Exercises Nellis Air Force Base in Arizona, where we had Sukhoi 30s, which we flew all the way across the world, and we air-to-air refueled them through the very few windows, actually. And this is a huge tank in the middle of the thing, as you know, of the fuselage of the IL-78. You could just sort of peer out, and we could actually see the hookups and the air-to-air refueling taking place. There's this great video which somebody on the ground shot of one of these IL-78s coming into land. This IL-78 came into land, and it popped a wheelie. I was on that aircraft, and I was sitting over there atop the glass sort of nacelle, which lies underneath the fuselage, right under the cockpit, which is one floor higher next to the navigator's seat.
The observer's pod.
Which is absolutely insane. But I have two incredible experiences, which are very rare and which I've never really spoken about. The first one was when I was on US Air Force C-17s in Hawaii.
So it's time now for our flight on the C-17. Lots of different scenarios that we're going to be looking at. Should be an exciting flight. Let's see what this plane is all about.
Where there were a bunch of C-17s and there were a bunch of KC-135s doing practice air-to-air refueling at dusk. There was a senior colonel flying for right hand, for whatever the reason was, and there were young trainee pilots, captains and perhaps even junior majors, flying left hand.
In the C-17?
So if you've got a KC-135, which is a gigantic 4-engine aircraft, right? And you've got a C-17, which is an even bigger, arguably, aircraft right under it. Two massive platforms right next to each other. And I'm in the cockpit looking up, and you see the lights, which are a visual reference for the C-17 pilot to pull up. And then the boom comes and it locks on just above your head, right? And then the two aircraft get into a bank. And the pilots had to hold that bank for a certain period of time. And I was hooked up. I was sitting right behind the pilot in command, the senior colonel, and every single instruction I was listening in. Just a bit more power, just a touch more. Bring it back.
There's a huge amount of trust.
It was
the
unbelievable.
Pilots.
And talking to each other, and then they would swap pilots. So one pilot would get up, and this one guy, as he was passing me, he sort of showed me his hand.
Trembling.
And later on, that colonel said, it happens to all of us. Because you need to be that rigid, right? On the control of the C-17, it has a stick, right? To be making those perfect adjustments. And every single one you're assessed. And guess how many times I did that, or I experienced that? I didn't do it myself. 6 times.
Wow.
So, and it became dark by the time we did it. That was wild. That was insane. And of course, the most fun one for me was buddy refueling of an FA-18 F Super Hornet. Of
Two Super Hornets.
Of Lemoore Air Base in California. There were two things which happened in that sortie, which were completely insanely wild. We did this head-to-head closure between two F-18s, and which was insane because, as they pass each other, it's like, it's incredible, I mean, the rate of closure was phenomenal. And then where they demonstrated air-to-air refueling for us. And so this was drogue and probe.
Yeah.
And so we sort of, again, move in a bit, move back a bit, move up a little bit, and then catch it.
Yeah.
Right?
The
And then
drogue
hold.
basket, yeah.
And then hold, drogue and basket, yeah. And then, move.
Yeah.
And Pavitra pull out the pictures. I've got this all on video and all of this. This isn't a story I'm making up. It was really cool. And in that same sortie, Shiv, there was, as we were, I think there were 3 planes, as we formated back to get back to Lemoore, there was a sinister shape, which was at my 5 p.m. Right? You look back, and it went right under us, and did a gentle roll and flew away. It was an F-22.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I saw an F-22
From the
up
air.
close and personal. That was incredible.
Wow.
The guys went Raptor. And that was, those were my stories.
Amazing. No, when you talked about being in the cockpit and, the boom coming down, the way things used to be for refueling, there's just an incredible amount of trust between the receiving pilot and the boom operator, because ultimately you're subjecting your aircraft to him, and it goes against all the principles. This is what I love about those documentaries that we've seen of the US Air Force. They invented aerial refueling, and they say that aerial refueling goes against all the tenets of flying, which is, you're taught to avoid missiles, avoid objects in the air, and here you're basically trained to go and knock against another aircraft and allow it to touch you, which is an incredibly dangerous thing by itself. But it just also occurred to me, Vishnu, because I remember Boeing and Airbus both investing a lot of money into exactly this. When you talked about the trembling hand, both these companies have put a lot of money into trying to get that down and automating that bit. And now with augmented reality and AI and multi-sensor, multi-spectrum cameras around the universal, the receptacle system of the United States, it's becoming and will become like a snap.
Absolutely.
It's no longer going to be depending on
There'll be drones which will be doing that.
Yeah.
In fact, the US Navy is already
the US
trying
Navy
those out.
has the Stingray and those things like that are going to do that kind of thing. So it's going to be a very, very much simpler thing, and allowing pilots and air warriors to focus on other things. But my one experience is special. It's nowhere near as dramatic as yours, but it's special to me because it was my first outstation trip as a defense correspondent.
Oh, wow.
So it blew my mind.
And you were with the Indian Express. So you were with India Today.
I was with the Indian Express.
Right.
And these were those good old days in the MOD when they had these absolutely incredible trips to forward areas
all the time,
and to the desert and into the middle of exercises and the middle of forest and Siachen and all. I mean, some of those things still happen, but they're few and far between. And I certainly am not part of them anymore. But this was a visit to Agra, like you said, where the refuelers had just started arriving, and I didn't know that a flight in a refueler was part of this visit. So I went there completely with a clean mind, thinking, okay, we're going to get to the base, see some of the aircraft on the tarmac, interview some of the pilots and the base commander and the squadron commander, and I'll just write my story and we'll come back. And then they started taking us into one of the aircraft. So I said, okay, cool. They're going to show us the inside of the aircraft. Then the damn thing came on. And then it started rumbling down the tarmac. And then we took off. And this was the reason why this was superb is because me and 2 other journalists were sitting in that observer pod.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And again, I thought, okay, fine. So we're flying and we're going to land. This is great. And then we see this other IL-78 fly like in front of us and right below. So
Yeah.
we've got this view, and you've been in
Yeah,
that pod, so you know what it's like. The view of another IL-78 there, and it had both its drogue baskets
Drogue,
dangling there.
Yeah.
And it was miraculous. And I've been since that time trying to figure out if there were any TV guys on board who had footage of that, because it was unique. It was marvelous because there was a Jaguar which came and refueled,
Which hooked up.
and then there was a Mirage 2000 that came and hooked up, and they both kind of peeled away like that as a grand display. And it was my first, and truly it couldn't have been more special, because it was a kind of demonstration of a capability that the Indian Air Force was so proud of. And it's actually kind of poignant. What we've been talking about in this episode is poignant because at that time the Indian Air Force was just getting its teeth into that capability, and all these years later, we're talking about leasing an aircraft, we're talking about second-hand aircraft, and it's just sad. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. Okay, there's nothing wrong in leasing aircraft and getting second-hand aircraft and refurbishing them. But I just hope the Indian Air Force gets what it needs, because it really needs them, Vishnu. You've been to all these places.
It's about time. Because, it's all around us. We see what the threats are. And so you either perform or you perish.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You can only perform if you have the tools to perform.
During an operation like Operation Sindoor, what kind of role would refuelers have played? Would this have been so that fighters could just remain on station and up there longer?
Yeah, I think
as
so.
decoys, subterfuge, things like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think they would have been our refuelers strategically holding in some places. If any formation or any aircrafts had to sort of come out, refuel, and then reposition themselves, they would need to sort of be there for that. But I don't know. Again, that would be very classified.
Yeah.
I mean, where you position your air-to-air refuelers in the context of a live operation, which Sindoor was a war, that's very classified.
Yeah.
Because that's very much part of your tactical operational playbook.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they would have been there.
And with Trump now sort of...
I think we blew up a Pakistani IL-78 during Sindoor. The Pakistanis...
IL-78, really?
Yeah,
I'm hearing about this for the first time.
The Pakistani Air Force operates the same Illusion 78s as air-to-air refueling aircraft. There's some account which suggests that one of them may have been hit. I'm not sure.
Okay. Since we are in this in a week where we've seen the US military do things in other countries and in the high seas,
we aren't talking about Greenland.
You may be headed to Greenland soon, but just as a final word, because Trump's the kind of president who's made it a kind of key result area to re-establish the primacy of the US military. What's that going to look like in terms of the US Air Force? Is it going to mean, a far greater emphasis? Not that the US military has ever lacked, systemic backing by the US government, but this is a president who said, I want to bring air power back.
I think Trump makes an important point when he actually says that the pace of manufacture of weapon systems in America's industry has to be stepped up.
Yeah.
He was, of course, talking about the delivery of Apache helicopters to the Indian Air Force. But forget about that in the context and how it was said and all of that. The fact of the matter is, he's right when he says that F-35s are not available to America's allies.
Yeah.
Of course, will America's allies presently be America's allies tomorrow is another question. But the Chinese already have 200 J-20s in flying and operational. Now, you can always say that the J-20 is inferior to the F-22, assuming that is correct. And again, that's an assumption because, as we know, Chinese weapons actually do work, and they work really well. America is not manufacturing at the pace that they want to. They need to get into their next generation of fighters. I think it's the F-47, I forget what it's called, to take on, the latest, the F-35, the J-35 rather, will be coming online soon. The other 6th generation Chinese platforms, 2 of them are already well under prototype testing. So America numerically is losing out.
Yeah.
Whether they are losing out technologically or not, we don't really know, because the high end of that technology nobody talks about. But in the context of America and air power, it needs to be looked at what's going to happen in Taiwan, if anything's going to happen at all. Would America take a very robust pro-military sort of position to defend Taiwan along with Japan? because China is queuing up for something major over there. There are no two ways about it. They have an extremely large navy now, an extremely sophisticated one. America would be operating very far from their shores. And therefore, even though their aircraft carrier fleets are unmatched anywhere in the world, it's going to be the biggest challenge that the American military has faced since the end of the Cold War.
Yeah. We'll leave it there, but you just given me ideas for what our next episode could actually look like on the back of Venezuela and special operations, but we'll craft that for that next episode. But this has been fun. I hope the Indian Air Force, after the incredible year that it's had in 2025, gets to see some of its requirements and capabilities, as you rightly mentioned, Vishnu. It's not someone's, fantasy birthday list. This is stuff that the Indian Air Force and the Indian government require for the many things that we want to do and be able to defend and execute in this country. So I hope things move much faster. And you're right when you say that tankers is just the latest thing that we've discussed on this podcast, Vishnu, by the way, where we've talked about our career arcs being, something that has traced the frustrations of a fruitless hunt for these systems, whether it is trainers, whether it is light helicopters. Now we're talking about tankers. We've talked about transport aircraft before that. Oh, we got to do one on transport aircraft next. We'll do that.
Yeah, we should.
We'll do that. But yeah, it's
we could have had so many more C-17s.
There's plenty of frustration where this came from. But we are not the messengers of frustration. We only call it what it is, in the hope that it will trigger the
Change.
decision makers into doing things faster. Vishnu, thanks very much. This has been
great
fun.
chat. First of the year.
First one of the year. It's been a
And 30
invigorating
what?
one.
How many have we done?
This is the 32nd. This is the 32nd.
30.
Yeah.
And each one is about 40 minutes long, right?
Yeah,
So we've really been talking a lot.
We've been talking a lot, and we've done a couple of episodes, as you've seen during the course of this podcast, where we've either gone out or we've had guests over. We will do more of that, but the sense we get is that everyone loves the both of us most, but we will do a lot more of everything else. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next episode.
Goodbye.